Have you ever wondered if your horse would ride better in a bitless bridle or if bitted bridles get a lot of blame for problems they don't cause in the first place? In today's video, we're going to go ahead and discuss the pros and cons of each from communication to comfort so that you can go with the right option for you and your horse. Let's go over the basics. So, a bitted bridle uses a mouthpiece to apply pressure inside the mouth. Different types of bits, it's going to apply pressure in different parts of the mouth. For example, what I've got here are a couple of snaffles. These apply pressure on top of the tongue. And as you can see, it's got a little joint here. So it'll also apply some pressure to the top of the palate as well. My second bit I've got here, this is a French link double jointed bit. So two joints, hence the name double jointed. And it's got a little French link. So a tiny little bit. This is supposed to be a little bit more of a milder bit than this type of snaffle bit because it's got a little bit of a break. So this is not quite as much of a peak on the roof of the mouth as this would be. Or you can have bits like this is a Mullen bit, which is a straight piece. And this applies pressure to the bars of the mouth. So that's essentially how a bit works. A non-bitted bridle looks just like your bitted bridle, minus the bit part. And you're relying on pressure to either the nose band. There's certain kinds of bridles out there that tighten underneath, like some of Dr. Cook's bridles, they tighten underneath. The downsides to those sort of bridles are when you do release the pressure, it's not an instant release underneath here. So for that reason, I don't use those kind of bridles. I use just a regular side pull where the direct amount of pressure you apply to each rein is the amount of pressure that is put on the horse's face. There's also kinds that can kind of tighten up around the poll, around various parts of the face. I just like a simple side pull bridle. Make sure if you do use a bitless bridle, if it's applying pressure to the nose, make sure you have really nice padded nose piece or that it's nice and thick. The thinner the nose piece, the more harsh the pressure is going to be that's applied to the horse's face. And horses have a very narrow bone right here. You can cause harm if you're too heavy with your hand. So just make sure if you use a bitless bridle, you're still being very soft with your hand. Bitless bridles apply pressure to either the chin, the nose, or the poll. The pros of a bitted bridle is, first and foremost, most horses are already familiar with this type of bridle. So that's a pretty good perk. Whatever horse you end up getting is most likely familiar with it already. It does also let you apply concise and refined movements, especially if you're doing advanced movements like dressage. If you have a bit in the horse's mouth, you can really fine tune your cues to get your horse to do the particular task that you're asking them to do. So it's great for fine tuning riding and advanced riding. Bitted bridles make it easier for fine tuning head position and collection. Most competitions are bit friendly. In fact, there are many competitions out there where a horse actually has to ride in a bit and bitless riding isn't permitted. So good news, if you ride with a bit, most competitions are a-okay. The cons are in the wrong hands, they can be very, very harsh because a horse's mouth is a delicate thing. So if you're heavy-handed, you're just learning, or you have a young horse that's just learning to accept the bit, it's going to be really easy to hurt your horse. So that's a big con. It's easier to hurt your horse because it's in their mouth. They feel the tiniest little movement with their hand gets reflected in the horse's mouth. There are bits that don't just take a pound of pressure for a pound of pressure. It actually amplifies the amount of pressure in your horse's mouth if it's a leverage bit. So the cons, it's very easy to abuse. If it doesn't fit correctly, very easy to cause some pain and perhaps even oral lesions in your horse's mouth. Some horses have very sensitive mouths, or if they've experienced a trauma, if they were previously ridden by a rider who is very heavy with their hand, a bit may not be for you. So it all depends on the horse. Another con of using a bit, it requires soft hands, and that usually means experienced hands. So, not for every rider, bits are a communication tool for both horse and rider. There's also more maintenance involved with a bit. You have to inspect it to make sure there's not little chew marks on it, especially if it's, let's say, made out of something softer like plastic or rubber. Really easy for those bits to get damaged. You also have to clean it every time you're done riding just to make sure that it doesn't potentially rust or get bits of hay and slobber on it. It's a higher maintenance. You have to clean it. Also, if you use a bit in the winter time, if you're somewhere where it gets cold, most bits are made out of metal. And even if they're not, the plastic or rubber ones, they still get cold. So you do have to warm them up either in your hands, under your armpit, in a bathroom, somewhere before you place it in your horse's mouth. So that's another extra step. Size matters too. Boy, if you have a bit that is too big or too small for your horse, it's a big deal. It's much easier to fit a bitless bridle for your horse than it is to fit a bitted bridle because not only are you measuring for the bridle, you're also measuring for the bit itself. The pros of going bitless is you don't have to worry about oral pain. Pretty big asset, pretty big plus. So there's no mouth discomfort, which means it's great for horses with sensitive mouths or horses with recovering oral injury if it's a dental or previous misuse with a bit, whatever it is, bitless. You don't have to worry about any of that. In the right horse, a bitless bridle can encourage relaxation because they don't have something unpleasant in their mouth. I know a lot of people out there, if they use a bit, no matter how gentle you are with your hands, a huge percentage of people are not as gentle as they think they're being. There's a study done a few years back where they looked at horses that rode with bits, and the vast majority of them had something going on with their mouth. On the extreme end, it was, cuts and bleeding. And on the less severe, it was soreness, swelling, bruising, that kind of thing. So that kind of made me like, "Ooh, if you don't need to use a bit, maybe don't." But that's my opinion. Let me know in the comments how you feel about it. Do you ride in a bit or do you go bitless? If you go bitless, this makes trail riding a heck of a lot easier because your horse can stop and graze without having to worry about getting clumps of grass stuck in the bit and having to chew around it. And then it makes for more work for you having to clean it. So pretty good for going out on the trail. And they're super simple to clean because you're not scrubbing a piece of metal and having to dry it and warm it up. Usually just some leather soap, or if it's faux leather, some mild soap and warm water, and voila, you have a clean bridle. And they're quicker to put on, quicker to take off because it's one less step. And I love a shortcut. Another con is that it can give some people a false sense of security that they can be heavier with their hands because there's not a mouthpiece connected to this particular kind of bridle. You can still cause harm to your horse. They have a very delicate nose structure, a very delicate bone here. You can fracture that bone. If you're using one of those cross under bridles, you can pull too hard and it stays tight. You can apply too much pressure to the pole of the horse where the bridle, where it kind of gives them like a squeeze to cue the horse. So definitely not a guarantee that you're not going to harm your horse using a bitless bridle. So just got to get that out there because there's definitely people who, you know, like I think I thought this at one point too when I first started riding bitless, like, my horse is sensitive. If I use a bitless bridle, like, there you go. But no, you still have to be careful. You can cause even more harm with a bitless bridle in the wrong hand. A bitless bridle may not be for you if you're somebody who likes to go and compete. A lot of competitions, they do require a bit to be used. Unfortunately, if you ride your horse exclusively bitless, the show ring is not going to be for you. It's also not great for horses that ignore cues. Luckily, the horse that I have, she was very responsive to a bitless bridle. I first started riding her in a bit, and I was having some issues, which I'll get into a little bit later. So I switched to bitless, and I was like, I really, really crossed my fingers and was like, I hope she responds to this. And she absolutely did. Some horses don't. It takes a while to adjust. I think one of the things I had going for us was that she was still very young. So at the time when I started to ride her bitless, which was when she was like 5, her little horsey brain was absorbing the information like a little sponge. When you use a bitless bridle, your advanced work is not going to be as precise. This isn't applicable to every single horse out there, every single rider, but that is a common downside, is that there's generally less refinement when using a bitless bridle. So I think the key takeaway isn't bitted bridle versus bitless bridle. It's more so what is best for your horse, what works for you, and how is the rider using the bridle, regardless of the mechanisms of action. In the wrong hands, any bridle can do damage. And in the right hands, most horses can go one way or the other. What is more important to consider in this whole discussion is the fit of the bridle. A poorly fitted bridle, no matter what type, is not going to be a good communication tool for your horse and has the potential to cause harm. If you are soft with your hands, your horse is going to thank you later. The less you have to rely on using your reins, and the more you can use your seat, your legs, your upper body to communicate with the horse, your voice cues, the better. The more you are pulling your horse around the arena, they're going to fall in on the forehand. Sometimes they'll turn into a giraffe and their head will be sky high. They'll be shaking their head in discomfort. And of course, let's not forget, you run the risk of hurting your horse in some way. Whichever you decide, understanding pressure and release, meaning that as soon as you get the response you want, you take away that pressure. So if you're pulling your horse to the left and they go left, you immediately release. You give with your hand, whatever leg you were applying pressure to have them turn. As soon as the horse gives you the correct response, you take away the pressure. So having a great understanding of pressure and release will only add to your riding. Today is going to be my absolute last attempt trying a bit on my horse Saoirse. So I rewatched the videos of me bridling her in the past and taking the bit out. It doesn't seem to be while we're riding is the issue, it's when I'm taking it out. And I had a thought that maybe it's because they're all jointed bits. I've tried all kinds of bits on her, various types of snaffle because I'm not trying anything harsh on her. I've tried double jointed, single jointed, covered in copper, Happy Mouth apple flavored ones, all these different kinds of bits, but I noticed all of them seem to get stuck in her mouth when I'm taking them out, even when she doesn't seem anxious. So today I've decided to try a mullen bit. There's no joint on this bit. It is just a straight bit. So if this doesn't work for her, I'm gonna be done trying different types of bits with my horse. I don't wanna torture her. She's very good in a bitless bridle, but if I ever do wanna show her and compete her, it would be really cool to be able to ride her in something. So this is super mild. It'll just apply some pressure to the top of the tongue instead of a little joint and hitting the top of her palate. So if this gets stuck in her mouth, then we are going to be done with bits, and I'll just give them away to people or donate them to the local riding school. But I thought I'd give it one last attempt before I say nope, not for us, not for my horse at least. So let's see how it goes. You can see in this clip, she is very willing to let me put the bit in her mouth. She's doing a little licking and chewing, which is great. It shows that she's nice and relaxed and exploring the bit pretty willingly. And then I'm checking it to make sure it's not too tight, not too big. I did measure it beforehand, so we should be all good there. And then riding her, there wasn't any issues either. She was very, very responsive, didn't have any issues whatsoever. So this was a very, very promising ride. She responded
beautifully. And sometimes in the indoor arena, that's not always the case. She definitely prefers the outdoor. So here we are, just letting her know she did a good job. I want her to be as relaxed as possible so that when I do take the bit out of her mouth, she's as relaxed as possible. And as you can see, she still is raising her head up and she's clenching her jaw, I believe, and she kind of rears up. It does get stuck in her mouth, but eventually it drops out. So this was enough for me to say, nope.
That is why riding in a bit is not for all horses. That is the most mild bit out there. It's not for her. I think she clenches up and gets nervous. I'm just inspect. Make sure there's no issues. Good girl. Okay. Doesn't look like there's any issues. I think she just clenches up because she's gotten them like hooked on her teeth before. So that's all right, Trisha. No more bits for you, eh, girl?
So it might start to sound like I'm somebody who is anti-bit, but I'm not, I swear. I'm just anti-bit for my particular horse, Saoirse. I used to ride in bits all the time. In fact, if I ride a different horse other than Saoirse, majority of the time I'm going to be riding that horse with a bit. So do you ride with a bit, or are you a bitless person? Or do you do both? Let me know in the comments. We're actually going to do a little bit of a story time. So my horse Saoirse, when I first got her, she was just a 4-year-old and she was not trained like at all. In fact, the person I bought her from said that they had put a saddle on her one time in the year that they had her, and she bucked with the saddle on. I don't know if the girth was tightened or what. Point being, she was not a broke horse. The first time I put a bridle on her, it did have just a simple snaffle bit. And she was really hesitant for me to put it in her mouth, but she rode fine once I eventually coaxed it into her mouth. Once I rode her, she was actually really good in it, very responsive, so no issues on that front. But when I took it out, it got stuck in her mouth and there was blood and actually a tooth came out. And I was like, oh, goodness me, let's stop and not do that again. And she's 4 years old, so I'm like, okay, so baby teeth are coming out, some adult teeth are coming in. So I started riding her in a bitless bridle after that, and everything was fine. And then I ended up moving barns eventually, a couple years later, to a barn with a trainer that suggested I start riding her with a bit, because sometimes you would get on her and she would take off a little bit. She would just gun it, or she'd kind of override where you wanted her to go, and she'd kind of be like, I don't want to go here, I want to go over here. So she said, to have a little bit more control, try using a bit. So I started riding her in a bit, and that actually went really well. For about a year, I was riding her with just a simple snaffle bit. And then one day I took the bit out of her mouth and it got stuck in her mouth again, just like when she was a 4-year-old with her teeth coming out. So then I was like, well, maybe there's a dental issue going on. I had the dentist come out, they floated her teeth. They said that there was no issues with her mouth. In fact, she anatomically was very sound and her teeth weren't really that bad. And we could actually skip a year with her dental, but I said, you know what, let's just do it now. So we went ahead and did her dental. And a week later, I tried a bit in her mouth and it got stuck in her mouth again. And then I was watching a YouTube video and someone suggested that you use a happy mouth bit, which is a bit that's got soft plastic to it and it's supposed to be very gentle. It's either apple flavored or apple scented. And I tried that and it was a French link, so it was very nice and gentle for her, and it had a roller on it in case she's anxious and needs something to focus on. So I tried that. Ride went well. Awesomely, actually. It was one of the better rides I'd ever had with her. But taking it off, it got stuck in her mouth again. So I was kind of at a, what do? I ruled out the dental. The vet had been out. There wasn't anything wrong. My best guess is she gets tense when you're taking it out. And horses are really smart. They have excellent memory. So I wonder if
originally when she was a 4-year-old and her tooth came out and there was blood, if that made her nervous and anxious and tense up when I'm taking the bit out, because she throws her head up really high and she doesn't want me to take it out because I think she anticipates this happening. So then, I've tried so many different bits with her, all of them snaffles, because I don't want to be harsh with her. And I'm not that skilled of a rider where I'm just going to use a harsh bit. So I got her a Mullen Happy Mouth bit, so the straight bar one. And as you could see, same thing. It wasn't as bad. I think it not having a link in it definitely helped. But it's to the point where I'm like, you know what? Listen to your horse when they tell you something. She has told me pretty clearly that she is not a horse that a bit works for her. I don't know. I'm sure like with the right rider, the right bit, the right trainer, all that, we could figure something out. But we're at the point where I do not want to torment her. I want her to trust me. She is honestly my best friend and I don't want to put her through it again. So I'm not listening to any more people that say, oh, you know, you'd have more control if you put a bit in her mouth, or you should try using like a harsher bit, anything like that. I'm not listening to them. I've heard it from so many different people in the equine industry. When you put a bitless bridle on your horse, if your horse is not like 100% acting like a perfect little angel, they're like, ah, you know, it's because you're not riding in a bit. So I'm choosing to listen to her and I'm not gonna try any more bits. At the end of the day, I just want her to be happy. So I'm not shaming anybody out there who uses bits at all. Like, props to you. I use bits with horses that it's appropriate for. So I'm not shaming anybody. I'm pro bit, pro bitless riding as well. Whatever works for you and your horse. So that's why I ride her bitless. I did find a really good company. It's another equestrian YouTuber, Shay, and her channel name is Free Spirit Equestrian, and she's got a boutique, and that's where I purchased the bridles. And I've purchased many a bitless bridle, and these so far are my favorite because they have a really nice soft nose band and they're nice and wide, so that's not a lot of pressure. And they're nice and cushy and they're just beautiful. They're well made. You can get rubber reins. They come in different colors like brown, black, Havana, that kind of thing. And you can get little brow bands that you can just snap out, pick your mood kind of deal. So I'm gonna be sticking with those bridles for the foreseeable future. They seem to hold up really well. I've had some other bridles, other companies, and they break easily, or they're just not as padded as I want them to be. So that's it for me. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for indulging my story time with Saoirse. Let me know in the comments what your input is, what you have to say. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's breakdown, go ahead and check out my other horse care and riding videos and subscribe for more hooves, humor, and heart. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.